This is Tessa, and the other day we were talking about gathering data for one-name studies, and one of the data sets that various members gather is the Social Security Death Index, otherwise known as the SSDI. And something that you should keep in mind is that currently there are discussions ongoing about restricting access to the SSDI. As a result, many one-namers and other genealogy researchers are trying to gather as much information as possible from the SSDI before it disappears from view. Probably what's going to happen is the information that's going to be removed is the Social Security number. The information regarding the name, birth date, and death date might remain, but at this point, we don't know what's going to happen, so I would suggest that one-namers and genealogy researchers who are interested in cluster research attempt to gather all of their surname information. There are a number of sites that you can go to get the Social Security Death Index information. American Ancestors, which is the New England Historic Genealogical Society, has the information, as does Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org. The reason that we're going to be working with American Ancestors today is because this website has the best layout for gathering the vast majority of information in a relatively simple format. Both Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org require you to drill down into the results in order to find the information. And I noticed that on both of those sites, sometimes the Social Security number is listed and sometimes it isn't. So what you want to do is you want to do a search for American Ancestors, or you can just type in www.americanancestors.org, and it will take you to the home page. Now, what we're looking at right now is the general home page with a simple search, and what we want to go ahead and do is click on the tab that is for an advanced search. When you do this, American Ancestors will take you to the advanced criteria, and something that you should keep in mind for any of the other research you do is that there are a number of databases on American Ancestors that are free to review. So if you click on free only, it will give you an example of, it will give you the ability to look at all of their free data. Right now, what we're going to be working with is the last name Keho, and it's a variant of Keogh. It's one of the 4 variants, and it's the last one that I'm working on today. And what we want to be looking at is the Social Security Death Index. So after I typed the first 2 letters, SO, it brought up Social Security Death Index. We're not going to use SoundX because we want to get the exact surname in a one-name study. So in this instance, I'm only looking for instances of a last name or a surname with the spelling of Keho. At this point, we hit the search bar, and it conducts the search for us. In this instance, you'll find that there's only 31 results. By way of example, the spelling Keough had 1,745, and the spelling Kehoe had over 3,000. If you have a number of results that are greater than, you can look at it in 3 different variations, 10, 25, and 50. I always hit the results for 50 so that I get the as many results as I can in one set. So then these are your SSDI results, and you can scroll through to look at them, but it's done in a table format. We're going to be putting this information into an Excel spreadsheet, and so what you want to do is you want to grab the information, and that's left clicking and scrolling through the information. And when you've finished, then you want to click on copy, and then you want to go to your Excel spreadsheet, which is already open. In this instance, we're looking at a spreadsheet that has another variant that we've already added, 66 pages of information on that one, and then this is the blank sheet or sheet 1, and we're going to go to column A, row 1, and we're going to right click and click on Paste Special. And when you do that, you're going to see the Paste Special instructions come up, and we want to change this to text. You click on OK, and your information is there. Not in a very good format right this minute, but we're going to play with it. Then you also want to come down to your paste options here, and you want to open the triangle bar and use Text Import Wizard. There's 3 steps to this. It always stays with delimited in this instance, and it'll preview your selected data. You're going to move on to Next, and you're going to remove the check marks by comma and space. You're going to check Other, and you're going to add colon, because that's what separated out the information in the database. And then you can type Next, and it shows you how the information lays out, and you can type Finish. Now, what you would do if you had additional information, if there were 50 names, you'd done the first page, you were moving on to the second page, is you would go back and you would copy the next page and you would paste it into, in this instance, still column A and row 64, whatever is your first open row. But since we only have the 32, I think, entries, we can just work with this sheet. So you go up to the top again, and you're going to expand your columns. And the columns will expand if you click on each of these columns when you are at the edge. And you're going to have a total of 9 columns. And in this instance, you're not going to really see how important it is to do, but I'll show you in a few moments that I had 1,000 data entries for Social Security information, and so I tend to do about 1,000 at a time, and in that instance you would have copied and pasted each time and put the information in there, and then you tidy up your spreadsheet at one time. So what we're going to do first is go to column A, and we're going to hit the Find Select button. And before we do that, what I'm working with is Excel 2007. So Excel 2007 and 2010 look very similar, and the big change was the ribbon, putting that information in so that you could work with certain tabs at a time. If you're using an Excel version before 2007, you're just going to be drilling down in the Home or Insert or Page Layout sections, but you're still going to be working with the same functions. In this case, with column A highlighted, we're going to click on the Replace bar. And what we're going to do here is we're going to replace birth date. And we're going to replace it with nothing. So we just put nothing in this column for replace with, and we click on Replace All, and it says it made 31 replacements for us. Then we're going to move on to column B, and we're going to select death date as the item that we're going to be taking out of the column, and we replace it. In column C, it's SSN for the Social Security number, and we replace all. In column D, it's state issued. And again, you click on all. You go to column E, and it's residence location. Keep in mind that the second word location is not initially capped. And you'll notice each time you do this, the information you're putting in here, it's residence county. It gives you an indication each time that it made the replacements. If you ever get a different number, you're going to notice that there's probably something wrong with how you put the information in on your spreadsheet, but it's a good way of verifying or checking your information. In column G, it's payment location. in column H, it's payment county. And although we have 9 columns that we're working with, column I doesn't have any changes to be made to it. So now we come back, and I'll show you the next thing I always do. I tend to bring down the zoom function or feature to about 80%, depending on your eyesight and how you want to work with your Excel spreadsheet. You might leave it at 100, or you might have it even at a higher amount. But this area down here in the far right hand lower corner is where you can zoom in or out. The next thing that I do is I take out the row that has showing whatever the number is with results. And the reason that I take this out will be apparent in a moment. But once you're going through and say you had 1,000, if you have a high number here and you've worked with 50 data entry records at a time, you're going to be looking at about row 100 or row 101, 201, 301, that type of thing, to be looking for this line. But what you want to do here is show those results and then delete that row. Now what you'll notice is that it put the information in with the person's name, the individual's name, and then their data is actually on a row beneath it. And so the way that we're going to get these to match up is we're going to click on the first name and keep the shift bar down, and then we're going to page down, and you can do this by paging down or with the arrows, whichever is the most comfortable for you, and we're going to cut that item. We're going to come one down so that it matches up on the data information, and again we're going to page down and we're going to paste it. So what we've done is we have taken all of the names in the order that they go, and we have cut and pasted them by dropping them one row so that they match up with their data. So in this instance, Annette Keogh, born May 13th, 1891 and died in August 1973. All of her information is together, and you'll notice it's the same way on all of them. You'll also notice that I haven't clicked off on the highlighted section here, and there's a reason I'm doing that. If you leave that section highlighted, the next thing I want you to do is hit the F5 bar on your keyboard, and that is in the top of the keyboard. And if you do that, you bring up the Go To box. And what I want you to do is click on Special, and then I want you to click on Blanks. You can only click on one of these at a time. It's always set for comments, but you go in here and you click on Blanks and say OK. And what it's done for you is it's highlighted every blank that you have in column A. And what you want to do with that is you want to delete the sheet rows. Now you've just gotten rid of all of the blank rows that you had in this document. Now when you're doing it for 31 names or data sets, it doesn't seem like much, but when you do it for 1,000, it's pretty amazing. And the reason that we do it like this is because in this instance we have some information here that is in column I, which is the payment county. And if we were to click here and ask it to remove all the blanks, it would remove the blanks that are in this section, or if there was no birth information or whatever else, and then it would take the rows and put them out of order. So this is the way we approach it, and I'll have instructions so that you can follow along as you do it the next time. All right, we go back up to the top, and in this instance, the first thing that we're going to do now that we have taken out all of the blank rows is we're going to bring it back over to the A row, and what we're going to do is left click and then right click, because what we want to do is we want to insert another column. I always have trouble with them being columns and rows. The columns are done with the alphabet, and they are columns, so they're up and down, and the rows go across and they are numbered. So in any event, we've added an additional column, which is column A. Now I want to go over to what's now column C, and I want to insert and an additional column there. We're going to go over to what's now E, and we're going to insert a column, and that column is going to be right beside our birth date information. Then we're going to go over to the Social Security number column, and we're going to insert 2 columns. And I'll show you why in a minute. So we originally had columns A through I, as you'll recall. Now that we've inserted additional columns, we have columns A through, should go over there. We have columns A through N. So you can see that. All right, and what we're going to do is add the title, add a title here now. So this first column is going to be reference number. And we're not going to fill in a number here, but we set it up on all of them so that we could input it if we wanted to. And this is going to be the given name. This is going to be surname. This is the birth date. This is the death date. And I'm taking this information from the titles of each of these pieces of data from the original documents. This is the Social Security number. The next one is state issued, and what this means is the state where the person who has the Social Security number, it's the state that they applied for the Social Security number. And this is their residence, location, and the residence county. This is the payment location, and you'll find in many instances that the payment location is not all that helpful, mostly because people live in a variety of places, and a lot of times they don't turn in that information, or a P.O. box is used, or people are at a retirement home or a vacation home or a relative's home. And the last item is payment county. And if a payment location is in there, the county is usually added. So now we're going to go back here, and we're going to just quickly scroll through column B, and what you're looking for here is an instance where someone has a hyphenated name, or Keogh is the name they kept. Maybe it's their maiden name and the name isn't hyphenated, but say it's Keogh Smith afterwards. So we're looking for any instances of that, and in this instance with 31 names we don't have any. One that I did just before this had a number of seniors, a number of juniors, 2 hyphenated names, and a couple of names where Keogh was clearly the maiden name, and although they didn't hyphenate their name, they had another surname. So in this instance we don't need to worry about it, but if you did, you would just be adding the complete surname here over in C. And then what we do is we grab the fill handle, and what that is going into the lower right hand corner, and you get a crossbar at that point, and you just scroll through for as many entries as you have. In this instance we only have the 31, and it adds that information or fills that information with the word that you had. We go back to B, and then we're yet again, and in this instance we're in the Home tab, and we're coming back over to Find Select, and with that highlighted, what we're going to do is tell Excel that we want to remove the surname Keogh in column B. Now when you do something like that, the name is removed, you have the surname over to the right hand side. It's easier for any filtering and sorting later, but it would keep, if there was a junior or a senior, and it would keep that additional surname, but it would probably be in the wrong order, and that's why I added the way I do. The reason I did not do a text to column is because some people have no middle initial, some people use a middle initial, some people use 2 and up to 3 names. I keep the given name all together with the middle name, and I don't worry about it in this instance. So we've taken care of separating out the given name and the surname. Now in this instance we're going to go over to column D, and what I want to do is separate out the birth day from the birth year. And in this instance we move from the Home tab to the Data tab, and we come over to Data Tools, and that's where we see Text to Columns. Now the good thing about this is it always explains when you hover over an icon what it's going to do. And something else to keep in mind is if you ever make a mistake, the undo key is right over here, and that's the one you want to use. But right now we're in the Convert Text to Columns wizard. So step 1 of 3 is to keep it delimited. We move on to the next one, and in this instance it's already given us comma as the selection, and we actually want to keep comma this time because that's what separates this date out and will keep the birth day and month and separate it from the year. So we click on Next and then Finish. And that was the reason that we added or inserted an additional column here, is because we wanted to have a place for this information to go. So this is the birth year, and it's separated throughout. So I think you have a pretty good idea what I'm going to be doing next, which is highlighting the death date, and you highlight it up in the column tab that has the alphabet in it. And then I'm also going to click on Text to Column. It's delimited, which is what we want. The next step is making sure comma is what separates it, and we finish. And it takes the death date and separates it from the death year, and we add that column. This column over here is going to be age at death, and we're going to be able to use another tab. And this instance we're going to use the Formulas tab, and there's a number of different ways to get to it. I just use the insert function, and it gives you most of the standard ones, and it will give you the most recently used one you had. In this instance, my most recently used one is to separate or to return the difference, subtract two complex numbers. So what I'm going to be doing is, if I've clicked on that, it says OK, and as you can see, we're in the row that has the data we're interested in. So we click OK, and our first number, we click there, is going to be the death year. Our second number is going to be the birth year. And so what this tells us is it's returning the difference of two complex numbers, or we're subtracting 1891 from 1973, and we come up with a number of 82, and that is the approximate age at which Annette Keogh died. We click OK, and it enters the information or the calculation right there. And yet again, you move over from the wide crossbar to the fill bar, and you run it down however many entries you have. In this instance, we have 31, and it does the math for you. So if you were a liberal arts major like I was, you appreciate the functions and the formulas. Now, what we want to do, the beauty of this, it's nice for 31, but it's great when you have 1,000 or 3,000 entries that you're working with. What we want to do here is clean this up a little bit, because we've tidied it up by getting rid of all the excess verbiage that we didn't want. We were able to separate out the birthday and birth year, the death date and death year, and we came up with an age at death. So now we're clicking on these boxes yet again, because they're going to take out the extra spaces in our columns. And the reason that we do this is so that this is standard in every instance of the surname and the surname variance. And finally, we're able to see N in this instance. So as we look through this, you'll notice that sometimes there's only the month for the death date, sometimes the date is in there. Once you go through all of your entries, you're also going to notice that in some instances there's no birth month or birth day. Sometimes there's a birth year, but sometimes you're going to have a blank here, and then you're going to have, a number that does not quite work for you in your data entry, but you'll at least be able to go back, because there'll be an error code there to tell you that you don't have the information. But that's in the instance where nobody knew when the person was born. Okay, so now that we've cleaned this up, the one other thing that I do in this instance is I go ahead and click in this box right up here, which is right before column A and row 1, and it highlights everything, all of your data. And I go back to the Home tab and I align it to the middle, and to the center. I just think it's easier to read if all of the information isn't against one of the grid lines. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this data sheet because this was the Keough originals that I took. So in this instance, I have the 31 entries. Now, just to compare it, this is a workbook that I use to take all the information in. And in this instance, if we were to run through this, you'll notice that in this instance, there are a lot of entries. You know, we're coming up on the 3200 mark here. And so I keep the originals like this. I don't do anything to them. It's just the information that I took from the SSDI with the addition of making the calculation of their age at death. So in this instance, I have the Keough originals, Kehoe, and what I want to do is I want to copy this page to another worksheet. So what you do is you right-click on that tab there, which is your title, and I open the box that says Move or Copy. The first thing you do is say you're going to create a copy, so you click on that, and then I don't want it to be in this workbook. I want it to be in my All Keough's SSDI entries. And then once this book is open, and you can see because I have the book open here, I have instructions. I have my surname, Keough. I have the first three variants already added, Keogh, Kough, Kehoe, and then I'm telling it that I want it to copy the entries I just worked on and put it right after Kehoe. You click on OK. Didn't go anywhere in this workbook, as you can see, and I'm going to save this workbook. And now I can close it, and then I'm going to open up the All Keough's workbook. And this, by clicking over here to the far left-hand column, it takes you to the beginning. I always keep instructions. Then we have Keough SSDI, Keough, another variant SSDI, the second variant, the third variant, and this is the point where I rename it again, because now that it's in there, it's Kehoe SSDI. And I have these entries. So the first thing I want to do is figure out where I ended up here with my last number, which was 6297. So the first number here is going to be 6298. That's what we start with. We use the fill again, and we run it down the entries, and you'll notice that if you have a number of entries, it goes very quickly, and then the fill handle always slows itself down when it's getting ready to the entry. Now you look at this and you say, wait, this is the same number each time. Well, this is another instance where you take a look at your fill options, you click on that, and you say, I want you to fill the series, not copy the cells. And yet again, the magic of calculations adds up your entries for you. And what I've done here is I have a reference number for every single entry that I've made, and I have 6,328 SSDI entries for Keough and the variants that are part of my one name study. Now, something else I do, and this is just my own preference for how it looks all the time, I have my finger down on the shift bar, and I have it, I'm clicked through, and I color my SSDI entries with that color, blue. The other thing that I do is I left click on row 1, and I go to view, and we're now here in the window. It's how we're going to look at it. I click on freeze panes, and I freeze the top row. And the reason I do that, it's probably not a big deal in this situation because I'm going through 31 entries, but I like to be able to see what the title the headings are each time. With 31 it's not such a pain, but for instance if we were scrolling through 3,000 entries and this top row disappeared, I wouldn't necessarily know what I was looking at, and more importantly someone else who was working with this worksheet wouldn't know what they were looking at. Now this gives you just an idea. Now in this instance, I need to reset these numbers, reset the rows here because I didn't do it in the first one. But they all have the same information as far as what the titles are, and this is real important on each of your sheets. And you kind of want to go back and clean that up. Okay, so now they all, Keo, the next iteration, I'm going to have to do the same thing there, but I'll worry about doing that later. I'm going to show you one other thing that I always put on my Excel workbooks, and this particular item is a workbook because although I have worksheets for all of the originals that I did, what this workbook has is the instructions for the project, and it has all of the worksheets with the information as well as the reference numbers. And so the first thing that I do is I have an instruction sheet that's on the front. And I think these are all pretty set. All right, and so what I've done is I have a project, and this shows up. I put the date, the project name, the tasks, the methodology, the status, and any additional notes. And I do this for every single project that I work on. So the project is the SSDI entries as a resource for the KIA One Name Study. And I put in why I'm doing it. There's some concern that the information is going to be removed, and I want to make sure that I grab as much information as I can before it's privatized. And the tasks then are checking SSDI entries on the various websites, comparing it to the others, and then seeing which one is the best one for how I'm going to gather the information. Then it comes over to methodology, and what I've done in methodology is the layout is a little, is make a decision and set up the workbook, and then I discuss every single item that I'm doing. And so you can see here I'm copying and pasting. I grab all 50 entries, I paste special. Once it's pasted into the open column and row, and I explain how to do that, then I tell the import text wizard how to do it, delimited, uncheck everything and use the custom box for colon. So it runs me through everything and what I'm doing in each cell and how I'm doing it. And the reason that I do this is I put down every single step of the process because, for instance, maybe I started with the primary surname and then something happens and I don't have the time to complete it. If I come back to this in 2 weeks, I'm not going to remember how I set it up to work on it, and I might not remember how I did it, and if I don't hit paste special, you get absolute garbage in the copy and paste system, and you won't be able to set it up and use it the way that you want to. So it's always really important to have your methodology in there, and that way if you provide it to somebody else, maybe you have someone who's working with you, you want to give them that methodology so that they follow the same methodology you're using. In the status, once I've accomplished the things, I put the status in here or a check mark or something just to show what I'm doing. Then I also put if there's additional notes. And in this instance, I noticed that there were different numbers, whether you used American Ancestors or you used Ancestry.com or Family Search. And then I did a little bit of Googling as well as a little bit of reading on the site to figure out why. And the reason being, what you find out is that the entries in Ancestry.com and Family Search are more up to date. They have 2011 and 2012. American Ancestors has, I believe, through 2010 on it. So that makes the difference why there is 32 or 41 entries. And I might want to go back and grab those entries that don't have any social security numbers in there so that I have the other people's information, but I'll add that to another sheet and show that that didn't come from American Ancestors. This is also a really good way, if you put your information in here, to know where you got your information from so that you are putting your source information in. So that's how I put this together. Instructions should always be on the cover of your worksheet or the first page, and then work on your primary name and your variance, and always keep them in that order so that when you do reference numbers, they also follow along. Because the next thing that we're going to do in a separate video is I'm going to copy and paste all of the information from each of these 5 worksheets into another worksheet so that numerically it's going to go from 1 to our last number, which is 6328, and that's going to be something I call a play reel. And what that means is I'm going to add personal notes in that section, any other research, any ideas that I have for doing additional work on these people. I can break it down by working on people in various states, everyone in Illinois, everyone in the state of Washington. I might want to take a look at birth and death dates and do a filter and sort in that instance, because I'd be looking for these particular people, certainly the males in this line. I could be looking for them in the census, depending on the year they're born and the year they die. I know that I should be looking for, say, let's look at Andrew. He's born in 1888 and he dies in 1972. Right away, and he's in Illinois, right away I know that he's going to be, or he should be, able to be found on the 1900, 1910, 1920, 1930, and now 1940 census. So this is a way that you can gain more information about these people. You realize where his residence was. He was in Cook County, so you might be looking for an obituary in Chicago, Illinois, on Genealogy Bank. You might be looking for local property records if this is somebody you're interested in. You might be looking for state censuses. I don't know if Illinois did any, but I know that both Nebraska and Washington had censuses. Washington had censuses before they became a state, when they were a territory. And so you can actually get some information from the late 1800s and 1890s before they became a state. So in any event, there's a number of ways to find out information about people once you have the Social Security Death Index information. I think it's also important to gather this information for your one name study before it disappears or it's severely restricted. So I hope this has been helpful to figure it out. Also know that on the instructions page, which I'll be posting, you can walk through the steps that I give you that I've also shown you in this video. And as I said, the next time we'll talk a little bit more about Excel, and we'll also talk about how to come up with your play reel. So I hope that was helpful and that you get busy and get all that Social Security Death Index information before it disappears. Thanks.